Hello, all you freedom-loving people. The DOJ released the transcripts and audio from the Maxwell interview and started to send the Epstein files to Congress. The FBI raided John Bolton's home and office, and Canada dropped its tariffs on the U.S. Okay, let's get into it. Today, the Oval Office, President Trump spoke about the 2026 FIFA World Cup. President Trump announced that the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. will host the 2026 FIFA World Cup draw. Besides holding the World Cup trophy, President Trump also received the first ticket for the final game at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. President Trump also mentioned a report in his speech. Today, a report was released by the Congressional Budget Office. It predicts that tariffs will reduce federal deficits by around $4 trillion over the next decade.
I was very happy that today, as you saw, the group that does this, a government group, radical left group, announced that Trump was right, took in $4 trillion worth of tariffs, that the $4 trillion are going to reduce the deficit by numbers far greater than they ever expected or heard of. And by the way, the stock market went up 1,000 points. That was as of 10 minutes ago. I can't tell you what happened. A lot of things happened. But the stock market's up almost 1,000 points. And it's basically on the news that the release that just came out from government that the tariffs that everybody was talking about, that the whole world respects us for because of what we did. The tariffs are going to be at $4 trillion. They're going to reduce the deficit by $4 trillion, Mr. Vice President.
Pretty good, sir.
Too bad it's not 5, right?
That's right.
It's had a huge impact, and the stock market is way up.
President Trump also spoke with reporters after his speech, like he does every time. A reporter asked about a factory that was hit by Russia in Ukraine yesterday.
I'm not happy about it, and I'm not happy about anything having to do with that war. I settled 7 wars, and actually, if you think about pre-wars, add 3 more, so it would be 10. I thought this would be in the middle of the pack in terms of difficulty. No, I'm not happy about anything about that war. Nothing. Not happy at all. We'll see what happens. I think over the next 2 weeks, we're going to find out which way it's going to go. And I better be very happy.
And today, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced that Canada will remove some retaliatory tariffs on the United States as a goodwill gesture in order to resume stalled trade talks, and President Trump reacted to this news.
A good call with Prime Minister Carney of Canada yesterday morning.
Yes.
Actually, Canada is taking away some retaliatory tariffs.
He's removing his tariffs, yeah.
Exactly.
He's removing his retaliatory tariffs, which I thought was nice. And we're going to have another call soon. Okay. Yeah, we had a very good call.
You're getting closer towards an agreement on trade?
I like them. You know, look, I'm fighting for the United States. Canada and Mexico have taken a lot of our business over the years, over 25, 30 years. Especially during the Biden years. They took a lot of our business, and it's basically all coming back into the United States now. We're hot as a pistol, and it's coming back in. Because of tariffs and the incentives we give, it's coming back. And it's impossible, I think, for another country to stop it. And we are working on something. We want to be very good to Canada. I like Carney a lot. I think he's a good person. And we had a very good talk yesterday, so I think it'll be good.
Today, the Justice Department released the full transcript and audio of its interview with Jeffrey Epstein's associate Ghislaine Maxwell in the interest of transparency. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche sat down with Maxwell in a federal prison in Tallahassee, where she was being held until recently. The terms of the interview granted her limited immunity from further prosecution unless she told lies. Maxwell denied Epstein had a client list, and she reiterated past statements that she does not believe he killed himself. The DOJ also started handing over its Epstein files to Congress, and President Trump also reacted to that news.
The Justice Department is also sending some of the Epstein files over to the House Oversight Committee today. Are you in support of them releasing all of them?
Keeping it open.
If they wanted to release,
people shouldn't be hurt, but I'm in support of keeping it totally open. I couldn't care less. You got a lot of people that it could be mentioned in those files that don't deserve to be. You know, people, because he knew everybody in Palm Beach. I don't know anything about that, but I have said to Pam and everybody else, give them everything you can give them, because it's a Democrat hoax. That's just a hoax.
Today, early in the morning, FBI agents raided the D.C. area home and office of John Bolton, who was the former national security advisor to President Trump. The raid was part of a high-profile national security investigation. The investigation was first launched in 2020, but the Biden administration shut it down, and now it has been brought back by FBI Director Kash Patel. The investigation began in 2020 when President Trump's first Justice Department launched a criminal inquiry into Bolton's alleged disclosure of national secrets in his book. The book is called The Room Where It Happened. That investigation came after President Trump challenged the publication of the book. At the time, President Trump argued that Bolton had broken a non-disclosure agreement, which was signed as a condition of his employment. But ultimately, the book was released in 2020 since the DOJ under the Biden administration had shut down the investigation. Then, today, while FBI agents were inside his home, Bolton posted on X, which could have been a scheduled post, but that's still unclear. The post said, "Russia has not changed its goal. Drag Ukraine into a new Russian empire. Moscow has demanded that Ukraine cede territory it already holds and the remainder of Donetsk, which it has been unable to conquer. Zelensky will never do so. Meanwhile, meetings will continue because Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize, but I don't see these talks making any progress." Also on X, Kash Patel posted early in the morning saying, "No one is above the law. FBI agents on mission." Today's raid came one day after Kash Patel revealed that former FBI Director James Comey had authorized leaks of classified documents while misleading Congress just before the 2016 elections. Yesterday, Patel also announced that FBI had reached a settlement agreement with some FBI whistleblowers. In a post on X, Patel said, "Agreements have been reached with 10 FBI whistleblowers and counsel to include a combination of back pay, security clearance, and reinstatement." Grassley, who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee, had previously urged Attorney General Pam Bondi and Patel to take action to undo what Grassley described as retaliatory personnel actions against FBI whistleblowers. Grassley also requested that the DOJ and the FBI restore security clearances to those individuals. Yesterday, the Supreme Court voted 5-4 and allowed the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, to cancel $783 million in research grants that were linked to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI initiatives. This means that funding can be cut now while the fight over the grants still plays out in the lower courts. Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett voted to cut the grants. Justices Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Chief Justice John Roberts voted to not rescind the funding. So let's remember what this case is about. The NIH began taking steps in February to end grants that are linked to DEI initiatives. In response, two separate groups of plaintiffs went to federal court in Massachusetts to challenge the termination of the grants. One group is made up of 16 states whose public universities received funding from the NIH, and the other group includes the American Public Health Association, individual researchers, a union, and a reproductive health advocacy organization. They argued that the termination of the grants violated both the Constitution and the Administrative Procedures Act, the APA, which is a federal law that governs administrative agencies. And they challenged the cuts with two lawsuits. The lawsuits were targeting cuts to grants that involve DEI, such as transgender issues, vaccine hesitancy, and other issues. The American Public Health Association argued that these cuts would lead to an ongoing ideological purge of programs that are tied to gender identity, DEI, and other vague language that are now off limits under the new administration. They also alleged that their public research institutions were facing harm because of funding delays and cuts. Then, back in June, Boston-based U.S. District Judge William Young agreed that the grant cuts violated the APA, and Judge Young ordered the government to restore funding, and he directed the NIH to continue to pay $783 million in federal grants. In response, the Department of Justice filed an emergency application in July and asked the Supreme Court to block that ruling. The DOJ argued that the case was governed by an earlier order in the Department of Education versus California case. That case allowed the Department of Education to suspend the payment of millions of dollars in teacher training grants that included funding for DEI initiatives. And in that case, the Supreme Court concluded that the government is likely to show that a different federal judge did not have the power to direct the government to make payments. And now the Supreme Court once again intervened and allowed the government to block part of Judge Young's ruling. The Supreme Court cited its decision in the Department of Education case and stated that the district court did not have the power to rule on claims based on the research-related grants or to order relief designed to enforce any obligation to pay money pursuant to those grants. The Supreme Court also ruled that the federal government would face irreparable harm if it paid the money for the grants and then was not able to recover that money. The U.S. Appeals Court sided with the Trump administration and temporarily halted a lower court's order that had protected about 60,000 migrants from Honduras, Nicaragua, and Nepal. Immigrant rights advocates alleged that the Trump administration unlawfully ended temporary protected status, or TPS, designations for people from Honduras, Nicaragua, and Nepal. But in a decision that was issued on Wednesday, the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco granted an emergency stay pending an appeal. This decision means that the Trump administration can move toward removing an estimated 7,000 people from Nepal whose TPS designations expired on August 5th. The TPS designations and legal status of 51,000 Hondurans and 3,000 Nicaraguans are set to expire on September 8th. At this point, they will become eligible for removal. Today, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell hinted at upcoming interest rate cuts because of rising risks to employment and price stability. In his final keynote address at the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium, Powell said that despite the July employment report, the U.S. labor market remains in a solid position. Powell said that various job indicators such as layoffs, nominal wage growth, and quits have been little changed, while unemployment stands at a historically low level of 4.2% and has been broadly stable over the past year. He also alleged that, as for inflation, tariffs are creating upside risks and levies are beginning to push up prices in some categories of goods. According to Powell, the likely scenario is that tariffs will result in a one-time price shift. Powell said, of course, one time doesn't mean all at once. It will continue to take time for tariff increases to work their way through supply chains and distribution networks. Moreover, tariff rates continue to evolve, potentially prolonging the adjustment process. 7 Chinese micro stocks that are listed on the Nasdaq experienced sharp rises and falls recently, causing many investors to lose their life savings. The FBI believes that this may be a pump and dump scam. These 7 stocks include Concord International, Austin Technology, Top Kingwin, Skyline Builders, Everbright Digital, Park Hub Biological Technology, and Fenton Holdings. The Financial Times reported that in July, the share prices of these 7 stocks plummeted by more than 80%. Take Austin Technology as an example. OST shares hit an all-time high of $9.40 on June 26, 2025, only to plummet over 93% intraday to close at 55 cents that same day. Within hours, virtually all gains were erased. According to price data that was analyzed by InvestorLink, a predictive analyst company, the cumulative market value of these stocks evaporated by $3.7 billion. With the stock price fluctuating wildly, countless investors lost everything they had. Tia Castagno, who runs an executive training business in London, lost all her savings after being encouraged to invest in Austin Technology. She said, "There's a feeling of emptiness in my stomach and shame. I keep questioning my judgment and remembering how I felt when the rug was pulled from under my feet." Ryan Sweetman, a lawyer at Sell Solicitors in the UK, said that he's representing more than 100 clients who fell into similar traps. One of those clients, a European investor, told the Financial Times that he lost over $100,000 on Fenton Holdings. The client said, "I almost fell off my chair when the stock was dumped." These 7 stocks had all risen sharply before the sudden sell-off. They had previously been promoted to investors in WhatsApp groups and on social media. Tia Castagno decided to invest in OST after joining a WhatsApp group and seeing an advertisement on Facebook. The group's admins claimed that they were a U.S. investment firm. They advised investors to purchase OST shares and promised substantial returns on investment. These false statements and the resulting investment activity artificially inflated OST stock price. Austin Technology's stock price fluctuated around $2 in January and February this year. Starting in April, the stock price began to climb and rose rapidly. On April 15th, the 3 major U.S. stock indexes closed lower. The Nasdaq fell 0.05%, the S&P 500 fell 0.17%, the Dow fell 0.38%, the Nasdaq China Golden Dragon Index closed down 0.49%. Most popular Chinese ADRs declined, with XPeng Motors falling over 6%. JD.com, Li Auto, Alibaba, Bilibili, and NetEase all fell over 1%. However, OST bucked the trend and rose threefold to $3.19 per share. On the same day, OST issued 9.09 million Class A shares and accompanying warrants. On May 20th, OST shares continued to rise. On June 13th, the price had reached $6.90. And on June 26th, the share price was pushed up to $9.40, its highest level in history. Then it plummeted. Such a dramatic change makes one wonder if this was a premeditated scam. The FBI later confirmed that this price action was the result of a coordinated pump and dump scheme. The fraudsters artificially pumped up the price of OST through false statements and then dumped large quantities of stock on June 26. In fact, Austin Technology has been operating at a loss for many years. It was established in Nanjing, China in December of 2010. It's a manufacturer of TFT LCD display modules and polarizers that are primarily used in consumer and automotive electronics. It was listed in the China stock market in July of 2015. The company's official website has published its annual sales figures, but only up to 2023. Prior to 2020, the company's revenue had been steadily increasing. In 2020, sales reached their peak. Starting in 2021, the company's sales began to decline, with the downturn becoming more severe each year. According to information provided by China's Internet Financial Services platform, OST's net sales profit margin for the full year of 2023 was minus 19.15%, with losses amounting to nearly 1/5 of sales. Losses worsened in 2024, with the net sales profit margin for the full year reaching minus 31.39%, or 3/10 of sales. In the first half of 2025, losses persisted with a net profit margin of minus 27.26%. The return on net assets reached a staggering minus 131.6%. Austin Technology withdrew from the Chinese stock market on February 5, 2021. After defrauding investors in the Chinese stock market, these Chinese companies have set their sights on Western stock markets. Austin Technology went public on the Nasdaq in 2022. Since last year, small companies from China and Hong Kong have been flooding into the microcap market. On the surface, none of the companies were proven to have taken part in the manipulation, but analysts pointed to clear signs of pump and dump activity. Investigators say that scams like OST, which deceive investors, are now commonplace. That is, scammers impersonate legitimate companies or analysts. They build trust on platforms such as Facebook and WhatsApp. Then they post links in groups to promote cheap Chinese stocks, touting them as unmissable opportunities. Simon Powell, a senior financial analyst in the UK, posted on LinkedIn that he has more than 20 years of experience tracking fraudulent Chinese stock, and he understands how social media is used by Asian scammers to make huge profits from gullible and sometimes greedy investors. Powell said that he had noticed unusual movement in OST stock price in April. This is not the first time such a phenomenon has occurred with Chinese stocks. Powell outlined the basic tactics adopted by the fraud ring. They targeted retail investors through social media, promising guaranteed returns and hyping up a particular stock on WhatsApp. They posted daily messages claiming big news is coming soon, encouraging people to buy more or hold on to their shares no matter what. Of course, during the initial phase of driving up stock prices, investors did indeed earn excess profits and began to trust their investment advisors on WhatsApp. The fraud ring would later suggest traders to sell other stocks to free up funds to buy the stocks they controlled. Some even pretended to be retail traders and shared fake profit screenshots. After luring enough potential investors, the stock would crash and ordinary investors would be left holding the bag. This scam has fooled many people, including workplace veterans such as Tia Castagnon. And the OST episode was part of a broader wave of pump and dump schemes that are targeting small U.S.-listed Chinese companies in 2025. The FBI said that complaints involving ramp and dump stock fraud tripled year over year. And there are other cases such as China Liberal Education Holdings, or CLEU. In early 2025, the fraudsters impersonated investment advisors in WhatsApp groups to promote CLEU, driving its share price from around $5 to $7 to much higher levels. Shortly after, CLEU's stock collapsed, about 98% in one day. The tactics were the same and the results were the same. Another example is Jayud Global Logistics. This is a Chinese logistics firm. In April of 2025, we saw its stock soar on unsubstantiated acquisition rumors, only to plunge 95% almost overnight once the rumors were dispelled. Again, scammers had flooded claims that a major deal or buyout was coming. JYD's pattern mirrors what OST investors experienced. The third example is Fetton Holdings. This is a Chinese healthcare company. In late July 2025, it was exposed by a short seller for an ongoing pump operation. The stock had run from just a few dollars to over $30 on rumors that pharma giant Gilead Sciences would acquire or partner with it. Within 2 trading sessions, Fetton collapsed by over 96%, falling from around $31 to under $1. During the pump, scammers in WhatsApp groups had pressured members to buy Fetton, and they even sent screenshots to prove their holdings. Fetton's financials notably were abysmal. Revenues under $500,000 net losses, which was similar to OST's modest scale. And a fourth example is Park Hub Biological. This is another Chinese biotech. It surged from a $4 IPO price to about $40 in a short time around mid-2025. Seasoned observers immediately suspected a pump and dump. And true to form, Fetton subsequently crumbled. By August 2025, it was trading below $1, which is more than a 90% drop. All of these cases share significant common characteristics. They typically involve small Chinese companies that are listed on the NASDAQ capital market, which are often recent IPOs or de-SPACs, and they initially go unnoticed. The float of tradable shares is very low. This is often because insiders hold the majority of shares, enabling a group of manipulators to monopolize the market. These companies have weak fundamentals. Scam promoters then use messaging apps and social media like WhatsApp and Facebook to impersonate trusted figures, and they spread false narratives of imminent windfalls. Professional investors can naturally identify problems more easily from a company's financial data or historical data. However, ordinary stock investors rarely have the time and resources to conduct such research. So, how can we avoid being deceived? I think one way is to understand the overall economic environment in China. For example, in our previous series on Evergrande, we discussed the overall trend in China's real estate industry. If the entire industry is in decline due to policy reasons, it's unlikely that any single company will perform well. We will continue to launch more series that are related to China in order to help everyone understand various aspects of China so that you can make better judgments than the unfortunate investors that we discussed today. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family because everybody deserves to know the truth.